According to UK government estimates, up to 6.5 million households could be putting up with dampness in their living accommodation. This equates to over 21% of all households. While this figure sounds high, as a surveyor getting out every day and looking at a variety of different properties, it's difficult to say that these figures are categorically wrong, but what does this mean for those living in these homes, and how does it affect them? What steps can be taken to eliminate damp? I'm Tim Clarke, and I will be discussing building defect analysis. It isn't just dampness we're called to look at as surveyors. Perhaps even more alarming than a spot of damp is a crack opening up in the living room where you've never seen one before. Whether you're concerned about dampness, cracking, or a bulging ceiling, all of these have one thing in common. They are all building defects which can be diagnosed by a building surveyor who can help you on your way to completing remedial work. We all like to give things names, and so we refer to the process of diagnosing defects and setting out necessary remedial work as defect analysis. This requires acute building pathology skills and a strong knowledge of construction technology. The exact process of diagnosing defects will vary depending on the type of defect, the age of the property, and even the way it faces. For example, when looking for dampness, we might be considering whether the dampness affects a south or north-facing wall, or even considering whether what looks to be dampness is in fact dampness. Normally, a surveyor will need access to a property to consider the cause of, and therefore the necessary remedial measures for a defect. They can't normally, for example, just look at a photo of a crack in the wall and tell you why it's appeared. They need to understand whether a wall is made of timber or is of solid or cavity masonry, how well the outside's been maintained, and whether there are drains or tall trees nearby. They might consider things like recent structural alterations, heavy furniture placed near the cracking, or whether the cracked area could have suffered from impact damage. For example, is the cracked area next to a car parking space? Soil types and age of the property are also important. It's critical that if you're concerned about a building defect, that you arrange to have it looked at early. Ignoring it can mean the issue will cause consequential damage, which can happen when you least expect it. To be fair, I'm also guilty of putting off remedial work. A few years ago, I needed to renew some pointing externally. I put it off for a few months until one day I came home to find my bay window ceiling had collapsed under the strain of water that it allowed in. This turned a relatively cheap fix into a much more sizable job. Don't let this happen to you. Dampness can be even more serious if ignored. Over time, dampness can lead to condensation mould developing, which can lead to or aggravate respiratory issues. In one particularly sad case, dampness was ignored by a housing association for a prolonged period, which led to the death of a 2-year-old boy who had developed a respiratory disease from the mould growth. This could have been avoided with prompt action. There are a confusing array of so-called professionals who offer services to address building defects. The top 3 are probably damp-proofing contractors, general builders, and building surveyors. Damp-proofing contractors have a vested interest in selling you their products, with many offering guarantees, some insurance-backed and some not, for their work. The more damp-proofing stuff they can sell you, the better, for them at least. In many cases, these contractors won't look at the building in the round and will sell you a cure for the symptoms rather than for the cause. If damp is being caused by a leaking gutter, wouldn't it be cheaper and far less disruptive to fix the gutter rather than fitting a new damp-proof course and applying a tanking slurry to your walls? That said, there are some good damp-proofing contractors who do an excellent job, but as this area is largely unregulated, this industry does have more than its fair share of cowboys. You might turn to your favourite and trusted builder for advice. A word of warning here. Builders are trained in putting buildings together and altering them. They're not trained in analysis techniques and don't always understand the impact that completing one type of work can have on another area of the property. They may not even fully understand the products they're offering. I recently heard a contractor telling his client that it would be cheaper to apply clear waterproof coating to his brickwork than repointing a wall, which would be guaranteed for 25 years. In fact, in order for the product to be guaranteed or even part effective, if the wall needed repointing, it had to be done before applying the waterproof coating. So waterproof coating would either be an extra unnecessary cost, or the builder would just have to come back in a couple of years. The right choice would be to ask a building surveyor who is well versed in building defect analysis to inspect your property. A competent building surveyor will have the skills, training and experience to examine the building thoroughly before coming to a conclusion. They have no vested interest in the cost of the building work, and often the best wins are found when a super low-cost fix is available. A building surveyor will know what to consider and will most likely have come across similar defects before. Many will even be able to help you organise the necessary work and check that it has been completed to the right standard. Do make sure that your surveyor is a specialist in this type of work, as not all are. While appointing a building surveyor can be expensive, it can be even more costly not to. If you notice that something doesn't look quite right with your property, it's better to have it looked at early by a competent and qualified building surveyor without delay. There are loads of great building surveyors across the UK, but if you want one that's tried and tested, you can find Harris & Clarke Chartered Surveyors at harrisonclarke.co.uk.